Hey, I'm Kev, Mr. Car, and welcome to Power Oversteer. And in today's episode, we're previewing the 16th round of 2013 FIA Formula 1 World Championship, the Indian Grand Prix held at the Buddha International Circuit near New Delhi. And heading into the event, we could see the crowning of the four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, but Fernando Alonso can deny him. Only if he wins and Vettel finishes lower than 5th, I believe. If I got my maths right. Yeah, I think I have. They say he has to finish 6th or lower for the title race to continue if Alonso wins, which is a bit unlikely at a circuit that Vettel and Red Bull have dominated in the opening 2 years of its being. And so heading into the event, Vettel has 297 points, 5 wins on the trot, ahead of Alonso. In second, who has 207 points, is 90 points behind. Kimi Raikkonen is third with 177 points, now 16 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who unfortunately retired early in the Japanese Grand Prix last time out. Mark Webber rounds out the top 5 with 148 points, 22 points ahead of Nico Rosberg. 90 points for Felipe Massa in 7th, just 3 ahead of Roman Grosjean, who's having a fantastic time in his Lotus lately. 27 points ahead of Jenson Button in the McLaren, who's been Mr. Consistent in that McLaren this year. Nico Hülkenberg's climbed himself into the top 10 now as that Sauber's come on strong in the second half of the season. He has 39 points, 3 ahead of his former teammate Paul di Resta. Adrian Sutil is 10 points behind his teammate in 12th, with Sergio Perez down in 13th with 23 points in his McLaren. Dan Ricciardo has 18 points in his Toro Rosso, 5 ahead of his teammate John-Eric Verne. And Esteban Gutierrez was welcomed to the points club last time out in Japan with a 7th place. He's in 16th with 6. Pastor Maldonado is the only other driver with a point in 17th for Williams, ahead of his teammate Valtteri Bottas. And Jules Bianchi leads the newer teams due to his 13th place in Malaysia, ahead of Charles Pic, Guido van der Garde and Max Chilton. And the constructors, Red Bull lead with 445 points, 148 points ahead of Ferrari, so they've virtually clinched that championship already. Mercedes have 287 points, 10 behind Ferrari now in 3rd, with Lotus coming on strong in the last strides of this World Championship race with 264 points, just 23 behind Mercedes now and 33 behind Ferrari. McLaren look like in a safe place with 83 points, 21 points ahead of Force India, and 62 are not safe in 6th, with Sauber coming on fast with 45 points now in 7th. Toro Rosso are in 8th with 31 points. Williams have a Sochi point in 9th, ahead of Marussia and Caterham. And so, since the Japanese Grand Prix, as it is a bit of a silly season at the moment, it is that time of year, there's been quite a lot of news. Danny Kvyat, I believe I've said that right. That's what I hear in the GP3 commentary. So if I said it wrong, blame on them. But yeah, the young Russian 19-year-old who's in GP3, he's in 2nd spot heading into the season finale at Abu Dhabi behind Faku Regalia, if I've said that right, in his Art Grand Prix car. But yeah, in the MW Arden car, he's had a very solid year in his rookie year in GP3, and he is challenging for the title there. Well, he's been promoted to the 2014 Toro Rosso seat, leapfrogging ahead of the likes of Antonio Felix da Costa, the Formula 1 3.5 driver, and his fellow GP3 entrant Carlos Sainz Jr. But yeah, what a surprise to get the Russian up there. I know there is a Russian Grand Prix in 2014, isn't there, at Sochi, or Sochi. If I butchered that again, I do apologise. But yeah, Kvyat leapfrogging up the order there. I do believe he's the most talented out of the young Red Bull young drivers that they have on the books. But I do believe it is a season too soon. I believe he would have benefited from a year in GP2 or even Formula 3.5. He just like guys before him such as Vettel and Alguersuari did in 3.5, or Biemi in GP2. And so it's a very interesting choice from Red Bull there, from Helmut Marko, to slot him in alongside John-Eric Vergne presumably next season. And he is in the good books of Red Bull, unlike Antonio Felix Costa. He's had a very up and down year this season in Formula Renault 3.5, looking at the end of the year on a strong note, like he has the previous season, of course, where he was in the form of his life last season, almost winning the title in Formula Renault 3.5 and GP3 last season. And so, yeah, Antonio Felix Costa just falling out of favour at the wrong moment, it seems. What a difference a year makes. And as I speculate, he could be a bit like Neil Yarn. He could be a benefit in other series to other teams and really carve out a career in those series. But it'd be interesting to see what happens to him next season. Apart from Kvyat being announced, there's also been, of course, rumours, and the strong rumours that the winner of Formula Renault 3.5 this season on Sunday, Kevin Magnussen, he was in the Dams car. He won it ahead of his fellow McLaren young driver Stoffel van der Voorn, the young Belgium. I apologise, I said that wrong. And I probably have. But yeah, the young Danish driver, son of former McLaren driver Jan Magnussen, who's now in the LMS and has been in the Chevrolet GT program for quite a long time now. Well, he's the McLaren young driver, Kevin Magnussen, and he's been rumoured with the second seat at Marussia. Quite a revolving door since the team have been in Formula 1, with the likes of Lucas Di Grassi, Jerome D'Ambrosio, and now Max Chilton in that seat, and of course Charles Pic as well. And so, yeah, we could see another entrant there in Kevin Magnussen. And he was also linked with Force India, but Force India are kind of rejecting claims that they're going to be a feeder team for bigger teams such as McLaren, who they've been fighting with for 5th spot for most of this year in Formula 1 World Championship. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, because I presume he's not going to be in Junior Formula again next season. The same goes for Stefan van der Voort. Well, he might actually be in Formula Renault 3.5 to get that title, but it looks like he's set for a test driver at McLaren next season. So McLaren placing their young drivers very well, and of course setting up well for the future with Jenson Button, who's going to be the oldest driver on the grid next season, probably at 34. And so yeah, they're really setting up for the future there, McLaren. There's also been some controversy, and let's go with the FIA elections first. John Totes running against, I think it's Darren Ward. I think his first name's Darren. It's definitely Mr. Ward. I'll go with that. Well, he's criticised the electorate, the regime there, with the way how it's been going, because there's been criticism of kind of going back on the rules, bending of the rules from Totes, and using guys that you shouldn't have to make changes to the election rules. So some controversy leading up to that election in, I think it's a month and a half, or next month at least. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that election turns out. John Todt, I don't believe, has been the best FIA president, if I'm honest, but he has been better than Max Mosey. I think that's not very hard. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he does regain that seat. It's looking very even at the moment from my very, very outsider's view, but it's going to be interesting to see the result of those elections. Of course, Todt became FIA president after Ari Vatanen tried to run against him and then quickly withdrew because he had no policies, it seemed. And so it looks like he's come out against a very strong opponent in Ward. There's also this FI Stability Group or something like that, who's replacing the overtaken technical working group, technical and working group in Formula 1. The problem with the technical and working group is that you need a unanimous vote to get changes through, so everyone has to agree with that. It's been difficult in the past with such as consumer cars, with Williams famously being stoutly against it, and of course changes to such as double diffusers, and all of these regulation changes have been forced back a year or two just because you need all teams voting for them. And so this new group has been set up with John Todt also in favour of it, where only the top 6 teams and Williams, for historic reasons, are allowed to vote for decisions. So of course this leaves out the smaller teams such as Marussia, Caterham, Toro Rosso. I guess and I'm guessing Red Bull might speak for them on their behalf, and Sauber and Force India, I believe. I also believe it's only McLaren, Lotus, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Williams who are allowed to vote. And of course, this has caused a split and calling for an allegations that this is illegal, and so it's going to be. It's like there's another political battle brewing in Formula One. It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, because of course the teams in this group are saying it's fine, the teams out of it are saying it's not. So yeah, the lines have been drawn. I'm guessing the bigger teams might win this one. It kind of history dictates, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And of course they have the political power over the small teams as well. But yeah, it's a real divide in Formula One, and hopefully it can be sorted out amicably and in a good fashion, or what I believe would be a good fashion, which is to allow everyone to vote, but just change it from unanimous to just 75% of votes or something like that. So yeah, it's a very difficult time in Formula One for drivers and for teams and for the FIA at the moment. But yeah, that's most of the news, I believe, off the top of my head. And so yeah, there's very lots of news, very busy week and a bit before this Indian Grand Prix. But let's go into some track facts about the Buddha International Circuit. So, track facts for the Indian Grand Prix held at the Buddha International Circuit. Yes, another Tilke Dome, but actually quite a good circuit. I think it's a good racing circuit. It's just not a good passing circuit for Formula One cars. It is great watching these cars drive the circuit, especially that middle sector and the last sector as well. It is a very good challenge, it seems. And the Indian Grand Prix, well, it's been on the calendar for the last 2 years. Won't be on the calendar next year, but it's set to return in 2015, early in the year. I think around April. I think if I remember correctly, March or April. And so the event is held, as I said, at the Buddha International Circuit in Greater Noida, near New Delhi. I apologise I said that wrong. As you probably know, watching the show, my pronunciation is a bit wrong. First event, it took place on the 30th of October 2011 as the 17th race of the 2011 FIA Formula 1 World Championship season, and Sebastian Vettel got the Grand Slam in that race, and he was the only driver to lead that race, of course. Had the fastest lap and the pole position, and led every lap. It was a dominating performance, and then he repeated it last year. Not quite as dominant, he didn't get the Grand Slam, but he did lead. He did lead quite a portion of the race. Pole position, yeah, the usual business in the Red Bull. So it's unsurprising then that him and Red Bull are the most successful driver and team round here with 2 victories each. But the Buddha International Circuit, well, there's going to be 60 laps held at it on Sunday. The circuit is 5.14 kilometres long, or 3.19 miles long, and the race length is 308.4 kilometres, or 191.6 miles long. Last year, as I said, Vettel got the pole position with a 125.283 and won the race from Alonso by 9.4 seconds, and his teammate Mark Webber by 13.2 seconds. Jenson Button got the fastest lap in his McLaren with a 128.203. And the origins of this race, the Indian Grand Prix, well, it was touted as far back as 1997 with plans to host an Indian Grand Prix in Calcutta, but that's been delayed. Of course, it was delayed until 2003, then delayed again, and talks about different venues, and eventually they settled on New Delhi, and as announced, I think in 2007 by Bernie's his intention to hold an Indian Grand Prix. Of course, Vijay Mallya is quite behind the project, and Karan Chanduk's dad as well, being quite, I think, one of the heads of the Indian motorsport, or quite senior figure in Indian motorsport, also pushing for it as well. And of course, with Narain Karthikeyan and Karun Chandok, being on the grid as well, or Chandok being on the grid in 2010 and one race in 2011, Karthikeyan being there in 2011, 2012, and 2005, of course, in the Jordan. And so in the Grand Prix, there was a bit of an appetite there for all involved to get it going, and it eventually was announced, I believe, in 2009, and the circuit was built in 2011. No, announced in 2010 and built in 2011. As I said, Hermann Tilke did design this 16-turn track, and it has a familiar look to it. It reminds me a bit of Korea in its layout, in that you have a very fast first sector of 2 straights, and you've got a little bit of a tight corner there with a hairpin, and first turn, it reminds me of a bit of a reverse Istanbul part, a bit of the Turkish Grand Prix from a venue there. It reminds you of that, just to the right instead of the left. And then you've also got a sharp corner at the end of this very long back straight, one of the longest straights in Formula 1, I believe the longest actually, ahead of Abu Dhabi and Korea, if I remember off the top of my head. Correct me if I am wrong. But yeah, it's over a kilometre long. It is very, very long. And surprisingly, DRS wasn't that effective last year though. And so yeah, it's going to be interesting if DRS is effective on that back straight and on the front straight as well. I believe that's where the places are. It's going to be. But then the second set too, is a bit more technical, especially in those turns 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then you got the sweeping right-hander at turn 10, and then you've got a quite fast chicane up left-hander, then right-hander. There's a bit of a bump in that right-hander as well, and then the last sector with the tight turn 15, and then an even tighter turn 16. And so it's a very interesting layout, and it looks a bit like a duck if you put it sideways. I will say, I remember that being I remember when it was announced that people would compare it to that. But yeah, it is a very interesting layout. It is one of my favourite Tilke domes. That's not saying much, but yeah, it's a very interesting race. It cost $400 million to build the facility, and it's on reclaimed land again, I think, or it was quite flat land, and then they had to build up a bit. And so yeah, it's a typical Tilke drone. And as I said, the Indian Grand Prix did have a 5-year contract, but it's going to have a hiatus next year owing to political and scheduling issues, but it's slated to return early in the 2015 calendar. It'll be interesting if it does return. And the organizer is the Japanese Sports International, or JP Sports International Limited, and they, as I said, signed a 5-year deal with Vota. And so yeah, that is some track facts about the Indian Grand Prix. Quite a fast track, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the race. So let's make my predictions now. So predictions for the Indian Grand Prix, and let me tell me if you've heard this before and I predicted this. Sebastian Vettel to win in the Red Bull. Yeah, Red Bull, it's just their circuit. They're imperious around it. Vettel is as well, judging from the last 2 years. And so, yeah, he's going to wrap up the title here, I reckon. He's too strong around this Buddha international circuit for anyone, it seems. But who could challenge him? Well, of course, Mark Webber in the fellow Red Bull, looking to grab a win before he goes off the WEC next year with Porsche. And yeah, Indian Grand Prix might be one of his best shots, as he's not a big fan of Abu Dhabi. United States Grand Prix quite well, and he's won in Brazil in the past, of course. But there's also the Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, something to be right up there with Nico Rosberg as well, challenging in the top 5. And you can't rule out Lotus after the recent run. They've always been on the podium now for a few races now, for at least the last 3, and they've always been challenging up there. And so yeah, you got to look at Lotus, especially looking at format around Korea where they have a long straights, but also got some corners as well that require some downforce, and cars that are good round them, and they were right up there getting 2nd and 3rd. So yeah, you can't rule out Lotus as well being up there, especially on recent performance. They're in the hunt for that 2nd place in the Constructors' Championship. And Roman Grosjean in the form of his F1 career at the moment. And so you also have Ferrari, and it's not looking good for them, is it? I don't think they're really going to struggle to get a top 5, I think, with Alonso. And Massa being right behind him. I think Massa will be quite strong, behind Alonso again this weekend, and looking qualifying again to maybe see him out qualify, but in the race maybe just to lose out a bit to Alonso. And then you've got the other point scorers, Sauber of course, who have just been terrific in the last few races, with Hulkenberg and with Gutierrez in the last race as well. McLaren to score some solid points with Button, he's always in the points in that McLaren, making it for Perez to be up there as well. And then maybe even Toro Rosso with Ricciardo. Not sure about Verne, his form has really dipped off, especially since that announcement that, Ricciardo's going to Red Bull instead of him. So yeah, I'm not looking at Toro Rosso points from Jeff, but maybe from Ricciardo. And Force India in their home race, you would hope that would maybe sneak a point with the rest or Sutil. I think it's more likely with Sutil, who's been very up and down, but shown a bit more in these recent races from the rest, even though the rest have showed more in Japan. But yeah, look for Force India to maybe fight there. 4 points. Going to be very intriguing in midfield once again at the back, and for Caterham to be a bit better than Marussia, and for Williams to be nowhere. So yeah, that's my predictions for the Indian Grand Prix. I think the top three will be Vettel, Webber, and it's got to be a Lotus up there. I think it's got to be Grosjean. I think it'll be the same podium as in Japan. So yeah, that's my very lazy prediction in the end for the Indian Grand Prix. Let me know what your predictions for the Indian Grand Prix is, and that is my preview of the 2013 Indian Grand Prix and this Power Oversteer. Of course, I'll be back with a review of it, hopefully a bit sooner than I did with my Japan Grand Prix review, but I'm very busy with this channel, trying to get all this F1 2013 content out there, and of course trying to wrap up Motor Glory with WRC3, and of course I had a look at the WRC4 demo as well. So I'll be back with a review of this Indian Grand Prix, hopefully a few days after the actual event. Thanks for watching, so till then, cheerio.